Fadeout, a Day Brandstetter mystery, Book 1, author Joseph Hansen, publisher University of Wisconsin Press, Terrace Books, 1970, narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 3. To make it a success story? She asked. We came to Pima. But look, really I haven't told you about him. I've left out too much. For instance, how funny he was. I've only told you about the despair, but he had a marvelous sense of humor. She touched the scripts on the desk. You'll see when you read these, antic and zany and never cruel. Just warm and wildly funny. And the music? Dave said. What about that? Yes, that was there too. Not that he ever counted it much. It was... She gave a little shrug and went back to the couch and sat down and picked up her glass. Hey, Habit. His people were musical. He'd sung and played ever since he was old enough to make noise. It was in his blood. He took it for granted, like breathing. Her brown eyes warmed, recalling sometimes when the gloom grew gloomiest about the writing, he'd suddenly dust off his guitar and sing all evening. Old songs, songs he made up himself. Friends would come in. We'd drink beer. It wasn't all dust and Dostoevsky. She glanced at him wryly, and away again. Just mostly. And the good times grew fewer and fewer. We weren't in our 20s anymore. Then we weren't even in our 30s anymore. Gretchen was growing up and needing things girls need. So Fox quit the bookshop and went to work in a factory because the wages were better and he didn't have the energy he used to have. Naturally, who does? It grew harder and harder for him to write. He kept trying, but he didn't joke much anymore. There was a lot of silences. She gazed out the window again, looking her age, looking like someone too much has happened to. So you came to Pima, Dave said. Why? My father had a stroke and sent for me. I'm sorry, is he all right now? He'll never be the same, but he manages. He can walk again, drive his own car. That was a year ago last summer. It was strange coming back. You hadn't been back at all? Dave asked. Not in 22 years. Dad was very angry about my running away. He was even angrier about my marrying Fox. He wrote to tell me so, and then he never wrote again. Not even when Gretchen was born. You see, he planned for me to marry somebody else. A rich boy here in Pima. I didn't want to. Not a very original story, is it? Her smile was thin, self-mocking. And I thought, well, show the old bastard. My husband will be the most successful writer in America, while I was down on my knees scrubbing worn-out linoleum in our grubby little rented kitchens in L.A. I'd dream of the sweet, vengeful day I'd come back to Pima in glory, wife of the famous novelist. Small-town girl makes good. And thumbs nose at Dad. He's well off, is he? He came to California in 1933, the Dust Bowl time, from Oklahoma. I was 10. The way he tells it, he arrived, she said it with a country twang, in a $5 Ford, with my old woman and my sprout here, and 30 cents in my pocket. By 1938, he owned his own ranch, free and clear, and in a matter of months, after the government ran the Japanese Americans out in 1942, he had one of the largest spreads in this valley. Grapes, citrus, truck. Yes, my father's well off, and nobody better forget it. She glanced at her watch again. But we're wasting time. You want to know about Fox. I want to tell you. The success story? Dave nodded. It was purest accident. She lifted the bottle at him. He shook his head. She poured herself a finger of brandy and lit another cigarette. I was at the A&P in Pima, buying supplies for Dad's ranch, and this man stopped me and asked if I wasn't Thorne Loomis. It was Hale McNeil. We'd gone to high school together. Well, not exactly together. He was 3 years ahead of me, but it's a small school. We knew each other. His father owned the Pima Valley Sun. Now Hale owns it, and the radio station. Well, it was fun, of course. It always is, meeting someone who used to. You knew as a kid. He was happy about it, too, seemingly, and he invited me and Fox and Gretchen to his house for Sunday barbecue. Well, the round with Dad was pretty grim. Oh, there were nurses, but he demanded a lot of attention from me and Gretchen, and he made no bones about hating Fox's guts. It was being pretty miserable for Fox. He loved the place, the valley, the town, this canyon, but not the situation, understandably. He'd only come because I'd insisted. So, of course, I knew Hale was just being polite when he asked us. He expected to be turned down, probably. But I took him up on his invitation, just to have something different to do. Some place to go, maybe someplace pleasant for a change, especially for Fox and Gretchen. And we did go, and there were maybe a dozen people, all very nice. The kind of easygoing, moneyed people you find in places like Pima. Not many pretensions, and one of them, not too surprisingly, had a guitar with him. He hardly knew how to hold it, let alone play it. So naturally, Fox began to show him chords or strums or something, and before I knew it, before he knew it himself, he was singing, and people weren't talking anymore. They were standing around, listening and applauding. And was it good for Fox? I hadn't seen him so happy since, she shrugged. Well, since Gretchen was toddling around in diapers. We ate glorious steaks. The sun was setting, and Hale suggested Fox sing some more. Everybody seemed to favor that ideal. So he sang some more, and then just about dark, he leaned back against the barbecue chimney, cording the guitar, and began to tell this absurd small-town story. Well, they laughed till they cried. So did I. It was a total surprise to me. I'd never heard him do such a thing. He said afterward he never had. It was... She breathed a laugh and tossed her hands up. Just sheer insane inspiration. The next morning, Hale phoned the ranch. He asked to talk to Fox. And with Dad listening in on the extension, it never fails. Hale said he'd been thinking over last night and laughed over it. And what would Fox say to doing a radio program on KPIM? Sing, tell stories, play records. Fox said he wasn't a professional entertainer. Hale said he was professional enough to suit him. Well, Fox had quit the factory to come with me, had no job, so he said he'd try it, and that's how it began. Dave watched her stub out her cigarette. The ashtray was a rough stone mortar. The table was Danish teak. Instant success? He asked. It took a while, she said. Hardly anyone noticed at first. Then, suddenly, at the end of maybe 6 weeks, nobody in Pima, or in the whole valley for that matter, seemed to be talking about anything else. Yes, it was success beyond any of our wildest dreams. Money poured in. Every advertiser in the valley wanted to be part of it. There were so many commercials that by Thanksgiving the show had stretched from 2 hours to 4. We dreamed of a house of our own in a place like this canyon, sitting huddled there in L.A. with the gas heater going and keeping warm with mugs of instant coffee. We'd plan and plan, every room loving details, so we were going to build. Lucky we didn't have to. This place was practically new. The couple who built it, the man had gotten a promotion. They had to move east. When we saw it, we fell in love with it, especially Fox. With this room, of course it was empty then, and it was perfect. Now there was the money. He made his dream come true. She stood and paced the room, looking at it, loving it. The brandy was working. Was she going to get sentimental? He hoped not. He'd begun to like her. The tape machine, the sound system, the art stuff, the Goya guitar, the Goldbranson piano, all of it, exactly the way he wanted. Even the books, exactly. Do you know their first editions? Most of them signed. She took a book down, opened the cover. William Carlos Williams. I noticed, Dave said. She put the book back and touched the shiny metal of the tall stands. These microphones cost $300 each. They're the finest made. What about the painting? Dave asked. Where did that come from? The painting? She opened blank eyes at him. The brandy had worked. Oh, I thought I told you. Before the war, Pearl Harbor, he studied art for a year at the Province School on Western Avenue. He and a friend, Doug Sawyer. I never knew him. He joined the Air Force, lost on a bombing mission over Europe in the first months. That was when Fox went into the aircraft factory. He told me when we met that he'd never touch a brush again, and it was a good many years before he wanted to. And then there wasn't time or strength, not with working 8 hours a day and writing too much, and he'd invested too much in the writing to stop that. Years so painting was one of those things he was going to do when his book got published and became a bestseller and we were rich. And you got rich. And he started, right? Right. She finished the last of her brandy and set the glass down with a click. And the book is going to be a reality, too. All those years of writing are going to pay off at last. Do you know what the advance royalty was? $25,000. That, my friend, is success. He was illustrating it himself here. She slid a portfolio from the art cabinet and opened it. On the drafting table, Dave went to look. The drawings were ink and wash, quick and funny, and filled with small-town atmosphere. I'll have to read the stories, he said. You do that. The brandy hadn't softened her. It had dissolved the polish. She walked to the desk, scooped up the heap of scripts, came back, and thrust them into his hands. And try to forget your grade B thriller theories, Mr. Brandstetter. Fox Olson didn't demolish his new $6,000 car and trudge off into nowhere in the middle of a rainy night. He'd reached the best years of his life. They were just beginning. Record companies were interested, television. She glanced at her watch again. See Hale McNeil, if you still have any doubts at KPIM. He'll show you the letters, the contract offers. Now, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to excuse me. Dave smiled. There'll be other days. I hope not, she flared. Frankly, I'm really quite upset and angry about this. It's perfectly senseless. When the storm is over, Fox's body will be found. Then you'll feel as absurd as I know right now you are. She turned away. Come along. I'll give you your coat. When he reached his car under the dripping blue-gray manzanita, his feet were wet again from the shallow river that was the road. He tossed the damp scripts into the back seat. He started the engine, released the brake, but he wasn't leaving yet. He drove up the road 50 yards, argued the car around twice, nearly sinking the rear wheels in a pothole big enough to qualify as a scenic wonder, and parked with the engine running. There was a lot of wet green brush here. Mountain holly, it masked the car. He waited about 5 minutes, then a station wagon swung into the Olson driveway. Green and blue, logo on the door said KPIM. Dave slid across the seat. The blurred glass didn't help. But through a gap in the brush, he saw the station wagon brake behind the Mustang. The old Chevy was gone. It must have belonged to the girl Terry. The driver got out of the station wagon. Distance and rain made it impossible to see his features. He was well set up, broad in the shoulders, no hat, dark hair, tan fly front coat, head down. He trotted along the flags toward the house. Dave lost sight of him in the tangle of brush for a second. Then he found a gap that showed him the house door. It opened. Thorne Olson came out, still in the brown boy's clothes. She ran 5 steps toward the rain and into the man's arms. He closed them around her. She clung to him, and he bent his head and covered her mouth with a kiss. They stood there, locked together for a good 15 seconds. More than enough time for a polite exchange of greetings. Then they went into the house and the door closed. Dave waited a few minutes, then let the handbrake go and headed down the canyon. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.